Bloomberg opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. I'm Joe Matthew in the Interactive Brokers studio, and time for Bloomberg Opinion. We welcome Bloomberg columnist Jonathan Bernstein today. The headline on the terminal: odds look good for the infrastructure deal. Jonathan, welcome. I'm struck by your take because so many people have been casting doubt on the future of this deal. Why are the odds looking good?
Well, there's still a lot of ways it could fall apart. You know, the headline is the headline, but within the column I talk about some of the things that could go wrong, and there's others that I didn't even mention. But, we've got now 17 Republicans voted to move forward to consideration of the bill, along with all the Democrats, for the bipartisan bill. And Democrats seem to be, at least so far, hanging together, and they all intend to try to find a deal on the second bill, the reconciliation bill that will be passed with Democrats only. And so, we're not all the way there yet. Bill hasn't passed the Senate yet, hasn't even got to the House yet. There's two bills. The second bill hasn't been written and fully negotiated yet, so there's a long way to go. But it's along the path that was set out to begin with, so that's very good news for the bill.
You point out in your column a tweet from former Senator Al Franken, who says, among other things, GOP knew if they stopped it, Dems would add it in reconciliation, and GOP would get zero credit for all the new jobs and infrastructure. Does this come down to a very simple premise, Jonathan, that infrastructure is good politics?
Yeah, the people like to take credit for stuff in their districts. And, constituents like bridges, they like roads, they like the electrical grid to work. Apparently Republicans are finding that difficult to oppose. So, a lot of us thought that Republicans would sort of have a reject everything attitude. That's what they had, for example, on the relief bill that was passed earlier in the Congress, with 0 Republican votes. But we had 17 Republicans this time say, sure, let's at least consider the bill.
I spoke earlier with Senator Rick Scott, Republican from Florida, who was a no vote in the procedural cloture vote in the Senate. He still says he's open-minded. He'll read the bill once the legislative language is done. He's, of course, one of many. But, Jonathan, you point out in your lead, 17 Republicans voted yes. What does that tell us, in your estimation, in your opinion, about the actual vote when this comes to an up or down on the Senate floor?
Well, the pattern has been over the last few years that the procedural votes wind up going the same as the final vote. So we don't know for sure. Mitch McConnell was one of the yeses. He probably carries several with him. So if he decides at the last minute to oppose it for whatever reason, it could get very close. But the truth is that if Republicans back out at this point, then Democrats have this backstop. They can put all the things that were going to be in the bipartisan bill back into the reconciliation bill. So Republicans don't have the votes ultimately to stop this thing if Democrats decide to do it on their own.
We're talking with Bloomberg opinion columnist Jonathan Bernstein on Balance of Power. How then, to your earlier remark, might this whole thing fall apart, Jonathan?
Well, if the there's a few different ways. First of all, we still don't have the second bill, the reconciliation bill. Democrats in the House have said they're not going to vote for the bipartisan bill unless the Senate also votes for the reconciliation bill. And while they have a top number of $3.5 trillion, it's a very large bill, Senator Sinema has expressed some doubts about that number, and we don't have the details of that bill at all yet. So, if that bill collapses, then even if the bipartisan bill passes, there's every possibility that the House won't even take it up. That's what Nancy Pelosi is saying now. If it comes over and that's all there is, we'll see what happens. But, Democrats are going to have a strong incentive to try to finish their business. But, it's a big bill. There's a lot of controversy within it. We have AOC. We have Bernie Sanders pushing for more and more. We have Joe Manchin. We have Sinema. We have other moderate Democrats, moderate liberals, very hesitant to include anything more. They all want a bill. That's the good news for Democrats, and it's good news for infrastructure. But actually agreeing on the details, that's tricky.
Yeah, Sinema yesterday suggesting that she does not like the idea of 3.5 trill. That's a big price tag, Jonathan.
It is. I mean, the thing is, if this all passes, this is a huge accomplishment. This is, especially on top of the relief bill earlier this year. This is, and the details of what goes into this, the number of things that are being packaged together here.
Yeah.
This would make it a huge, successful first year for the Democrats and for Joe Biden. I think it would probably be fair to say it would be more than Barack Obama got in his first year, and far more than any other recent president got in their first year.
Front-loading the agenda in a new administration once again. Big thanks to Jonathan Bernstein of Bloomberg Opinion. A great column, Jonathan. Thanks for talking to us about it. You can read more on this and other stories from Bloomberg Opinion at Bloomberg.com/opinion and on the terminal by typing OPIN GO. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington, in for David Weston. We've got a lot more ground to cover. Coming up, Fed Chair Jay Powell says there is still some way to go before the Fed begins reducing massive support for the U.S. economy. He had a lot more to say than that. We'll talk about it ahead with economist Calvin Schnur-Neyri here on Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew, and this is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Robinhood is getting a cold shoulder from Wall Street as it makes its trading debut. The online trading platform fell by more than 10% before recovering. It sold its shares last night at 38. Analysts say the company still has a lot to prove. Electric truck startup Nikola is down more than 9% after prosecutors charged its founder and former chairman of lying to investors. His alleged false statements included the existence of a fully functional semi-truck prototype that he knew was inoperable. The broader market having a good day, fueled by positive economic data. The major averages are challenging their all-time closing highs. The easing of pandemic restrictions worldwide has consumers buying more makeup. L'Oreal, whose brands also include Maybelline and Lancome, says sales jumped 34% from last year when many hair salons and non-essential stores were shut. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Economics.
All this doom and gloom is out there.
Finance.
Do you see this as a technical correction?
Investment.
What are you looking at to give you some sort of compass through this period?
The Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast.
Lots and lots of talk about what the Fed should and shouldn't do.
Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, Lisa Abramowitz, and the names that shape the world's markets.
We speak with Professor Schiller of Yale University.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Listen today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts. In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hey guys, it's me, Isabella Gomez, filling in for Smokey Bear because he's got more to say than just...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Like, if you're outside enjoying a barbecue, don't let a hamburger distract you from fire safety. Make sure you aren't dumping your hot coals or ashes onto the ground because that could start a wildfire. So take wildfire prevention seriously and let's save the world one day at a time. Juntos con Smokey Bear, podemos hacerlo. Go to smokeybear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Burden LLP Accountants and Advisors presents Tax Chat with Lisa Goldman, partner and leader of Burden's International Tax and Advisory Practice.
If you're a high net worth individual with international investments or a business owner with operations overseas, it is essential to have a tax advisor who knows how to protect your assets on a global scale. Owning and investing in foreign corporations comes with certain tax responsibilities. Burden Accountants and Advisors works with clients to ensure that they understand the intricacies of the global market, maximize the tax opportunities available, and reduce the challenges presented by international tax laws.
If you're a high net worth individual or a business owner, let Burden help protect you, your family, and your business. For more tax chat from Burden Accountants and Advisors, visit BurdenLLP.com. That's BERDONLLP.com. Burden Accountants and Advisors. We listen, we solve, we do.
The Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council present the story of Tom and Levi.
Tom is the smartest man I know. He's been a professor at 2 major universities, been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, he told me that he was having problems in his classes. I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. And he was telling them that he was doing it as a favor to them, but I think in reality, he just wanted to get out of there. I was really starting to worry because I saw something was wrong.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me, and my love for him was just immense.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. Why get news of Asia that comes from someplace else?
Did you see a cohesion point between Beijing and Washington?
Weeknights at 6 Eastern.
Maybe it won't be a negative for markets.
On Bloomberg Radio. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston. Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco. Bloomberg 960. To the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Thanks for joining us on Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington, in for David Weston. The Federal Reserve says inflation risks are higher but remain transitory, not permanent. Coming up, we'll talk about it with economist Calvin Schnur. First, we look at the markets today. Here's Charlie Fallon.
Thank you very much. We're higher across the board. We're looking at records. Busy day, though, for Joe Matthew. Don't forget to join him 5 p.m. Wall Street time. Sound on right here on Bloomberg. Got to begin with Robinhood Markets. That's the online trading platform that focused on making investors out of millennials. Shares are lower by about 0.5% after raising $2.1 billion in an initial public offering that was priced at the bottom of a marketed range. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all advancing right now. The S&P at a record up 29, 44.29 now, higher by about 0.7%. Look at the year-to-date gains on the S&P. So far this year, as you check those 401k statements, up 17.9%. To put that in context, both the Dow and now NASDAQ are up this year by 14.9%. Today, we've got the Dow up 235, up 0.7. NASDAQ up 56, a gain there of 0.4. 10 years down 11/30 seconds. 10-year yield 1.26%. Equities are advancing as the latest read on the economy eases concerns about inflation and the Federal Reserve scaling back its ultra-accommodative policies. Growth missed forecasts in the second quarter as the effects of supply chain constraints reverberated throughout the economy and took the shine off of one of the biggest gains in consumer spending in decades. Gross domestic product expanded at a 6.5% annualized rate following a revised 6.3% pace in the first quarter. And the Labor Department said initial jobless claims in regular state programs totaled 400,000 a week, ending July 24th, down 24,000 from the prior week. Matt Lazzetti is chief U.S. economist at Deutsche Bank Securities.
I think what is most important for markets and the Fed right now is the labor market data. And the stalling out of jobless claims that we've seen is an important development. Jobless claims have not been as reliable as they were pre-COVID, but it is evidence of some stalling out or some softening in the improvement that we've seen there. If that continues, it's certainly an important development from the Fed's perspective, because Powell noted yesterday, certainly that is the key consideration for when they are going to taper.
And again, the 10-year yield, 1.26%. Spot gold up 1.3%, 18.31 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.1%, 73.17 a barrel. Recapping stocks higher, S&P at a record up 28, up 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That Joe Matthew is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you. And thank you for being with us on Balance of Power here on Bloomberg Radio, live from the Interactive Brokers studio. Word came down from on high yesterday as policymakers left rates unchanged. It was right around this time. Also left the statement essentially unchanged. And by that, I mean transitory stays in the statement with regard to inflation. We're joined now by Calvin Schnur, senior economist at Nareit. Thanks for being here, Cal.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Would you like to see that word change, something other than transitory? As some suggest, it might want to read permanent. And to that end, how do you define transitory?
Well, actually, Chairman Powell spent some time talking about what he meant by transitory yesterday, and I do believe that it's the right word. It's the right word because we're not likely to see sustained price increases year after year after year, which is what he's worried about. He said we're seeing bottlenecks in a few key sectors. We've all seen the news. We've seen the chips that are impacting auto production. There are some other sectors. But it's not really widespread. And he says that these are real price increases. This is taking away from people's purchasing power. But as production comes back, we're not going to see again and again and again price increases like this. So I think he's right to say we do have price stability for the medium to long term. So the Fed policy is on track.
Lower than expected readings today on GDP growth, as well as a somewhat disappointing reading on new claims for unemployment benefits. Do those two new data points support that theory?
The GDP, you saw inventories being down, which could be a supply chain issue that they're drawing down inventories. Companies are drawing down inventories, and so that took something off of growth. But it's really important to see that you had strong consumer spending. You had a good gain pretty much across the board in consumer spending. The consumer is going to be obviously really important in the economy, and it's looking quite good right now. GDP report showed saving rate around 10%. That's higher than in earlier periods. Like, consumers still have a lot of extra spending power that as the pandemic comes more under control, there's still a lot more spending power that's going to push GDP growth forward in the future.
Well, with all that said, then, why not start tapering now? We're talking about tapering. Some members would like to start. But we look at the clock here with the idea of hiking interest rates at some point. Maybe it's the end of next year, maybe not. But don't we need to get started here?
Well, Chairman Powell stressed that it's really unusual. What he said was for the policy goals to be in conflict. What he meant was they have a goal for maximum employment and price stability. And usually, if you have higher inflation, you have a very tight job market. But he's saying now you do not have a tight job market, despite some difficulty hiring in some specific positions. You don't have a tight job market, but you do have inflation running above trend. And that's why he said it's in conflict. Now, again, if it's transitory, if the inflation is transitory, then you want to keep policy accommodated because of the risks. We talked about the uncertainty about COVID risks. There's uncertainty about many other aspects of the outlook. The rest of the world is still struggling. We do not have strong export growth. So the Fed wants to make sure that the economy really is firing on all cylinders. He did mention a couple of times employment is 8 to 9 million, 8 million to 9 million below where it was prior to the pandemic hitting. He's going to want to see that number get a lot closer to where we were in 2019 before we talk about tapering and raising interest rates.
Talk to us more about the job market, Calvin. Chair Powell said Americans want to work. We have an infrastructure bill that appears to be moving to some sort of progress here, and I don't want to go too far into that, but it calls for an enormous amount of spending on construction, on other projects, roads, bridges, and so forth, that would require thousands of workers to get all of that done. With almost 7 million jobs still unrealized since the pandemic, how do you get people back to work? When will they come back to work?
Well, it's taking some time. I think we've all been a little bit surprised at how slow the job recovery has been, given we said, well, once the economy opens up again, many of us thought this could come back pretty quickly. But as Chairman Powell pointed out, many people are not going back to their old job. They're looking for a new job. That takes some time. There are a lot of companies that are hiring about as fast as they can. The frontline areas of the hospitality, the travel, the hotels, the bars and restaurants, they've been doing a fair amount of hiring, but they still don't have all of their business back yet. So there's some reluctance to get too far ahead of the game. Now, for infrastructure, we'll need construction jobs. Not everyone can go out and work in construction, but many people could. One of the key points about the infrastructure bill is the spending will be spread out over a pretty long horizon. So we don't need to get all those people back to work right away. But I think by next year this time, you're going to say, wow, this job market is much better than it had been, and it's supporting the overall economy.
I'm sure I don't need to illustrate for you the debate around all of this. Do you believe that it's hesitancy around COVID? Do you believe it's child care? Or do you believe it's unemployment benefits, that once those benefits come down, and they have in a lot of states already, people will be forced to return to work?
Yeah, there's some of all of the above. I was just mentioning that places like hotels and restaurants, they don't have all the business back, so they don't really need to hire yet. People who have children and they're not in school and you don't have child care, you really can't expect people to go back to work in that type of situation. There are many people who are not sure if they want to go back to the type of jobs they had before. There are a lot of people who are transitioning to a different career path. Probably the biggest debate has been about the unemployment insurance, and we actually have seen that the states that ended their extra benefits early have not seen a surge in job growth relative to the others. So it really looks like it's more of the COVID, child care, schools overall hesitancy, and that's just going to take some time for people to get back to work.
Calvin Schnur, senior economist at NAREIT. We thank you for the insights. Coming up, we'll dig a little further into transportation and infrastructure with an expert. It's next on Bloomberg's Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew. This is Bloomberg.
For the Jewish community,
the world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg terminal. The buy side and the sell side together, collaborating across markets and countries in real time, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network of over 325,000 financial professionals that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Request a demo at bloomberg.com/professional.
Fund. Past President Noel Spiegel.
People often ask me why it's important to use JCF for their charitable giving. I tell them that JCF has a profound impact on our community. Thanks to the revenue generated from our funds, JCF makes an annual $2 million grant to UJA Federation of New York and makes grants from our endowment, the Special Gifts Fund. This year, we proudly granted more than $800,000 to support a kosher food pantry at Mid-Island YJCC, Jewish daycare at the Ed Alliance, a renovation at Camp Oakhurst, and an intergenerational Holocaust program at Ramaz. I'd like you to hear about our impact from a past Special Gifts Fund recipient.
Plaza Jewish Community Chapel is most grateful to JCF for supplying seed money to start the organization. Almost 10,000 families have relied on Plaza to provide an affordable yet dignified Jewish funeral.
Let JCF maximize your impact. Visit jcfny.org or call 212-752-8277.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon's Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our #1 priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC.
The composer Joseph Haydn famously said, "I listened more than I studied."
It sounds like a law school hypothetical.
Here at Bloomberg, it's the same thing.
Do you maintain that low-rate regime? Can you see out 2 years?
How do you build a strategy with that eventuality in mind?
Experts, information, news.
The push sets up a potential fight.
What do we know about how it will go public?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
NJIT makes the workforce of the future, and Greg Sauter, a member of NJIT's Board of Overseers and president of engineering firm WGI, says NJIT graduates have the in-demand skills that drive today's tech-powered workplace.
Our world is moving to a place of connecting the physical with the digital. In the field of engineering and infrastructure, there's not a thing that we do that's not being changed by technology. We've gone from two-dimensional renderings to immersive, augmented, and virtual reality. Solution sets used to be solved one at a time. Now we can run nearly an endless alternatives analysis and optimize the output. And how we construct that future, from autonomous equipment to 3 and 4D printing. NJIT students graduate with that critical understanding of the cyber-physical world and how we move between them, but with that all-important grounding in applied STEM principles.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. First day of trading for Robinhood, and the shares now lower by 4%. Company shares opened at $38 after selling at that price in the IPO. Right now, Robinhood is at $36.32. Again, Robinhood shares now lower by 4.23%. Amazon will be reporting after the closing bell today. Shares down by 0.7%. Also scheduled to report T-Mobile, and its shares lower by 0.5%. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all pushing higher. Could see a record out of the S&P today, up 27 right now at 44.28, up by 0.6%. The Dow's up 213, also up 0.6. NASDAQ up 51, a gain there of 0.3%. NASDAQ 100 index up 0.4%. The Russell 2000 up 1.3%. Dow Transports up 1.2%. 10 years down 10.30 seconds. 10-year yield now 1.26%. Spot gold up $24 the ounce, up 1.3%, 18.31. And West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.3%, 73.30 a barrel. Again, recapping, stocks on track for a record after the GDP and jobs data. S&P up 27, up 0.6. I'm Charlie Pellet. That, Joe Matthew, is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you, and welcome to Balance of Power from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio. I'm Joe Matthew, and for David Weston today, the infrastructure plan moving ahead in the Senate dedicates $110 billion to roads, bridges, and major projects. Almost $40 billion as well for transit. Now, these numbers were, of course, knocked around for weeks and weeks as Senate negotiators sought this deal. And joining us to talk more about the transportation piece of this specifically is Robert Poole of the Reason Foundation. Robert, welcome to Balance of Power.
Thanks, Joe. Good to be here.
You have spent quite a bit of time talking about transportation and infrastructure in your career. Not only trained as an engineer at MIT, but you advised the Reagan, Bush, Clinton, and W. Bush administrations on infrastructure. None of them were able to get something done here. And I wonder, as you look at these numbers, if they are sufficient, if this plan is on the right track when it comes to transportation.
Well, the best I can say about it is it's definitely better than what the president originally proposed, the American Jobs Plan, which was mostly about other things. It's much better than the House bill on surface transportation reauthorization. And at least a big chunk of it goes for roads and bridges, which is the way everybody has been promoting the whole idea of an infrastructure bill. So that's a positive. I think it's tragic that the pay-fors are all kinds of loose change together from the couch cushions, as opposed to, in the highways at least, we've always paid for highways by user fees, either dedicated gas taxes or tolls. And that's completely absent in the $110 billion here. It's all going to be paid for essentially by borrowing, because all these other things they've cobbled together are just one-time make goods that are not a sustainable source for going forward. And it's a missed opportunity, really, to have done a lot more that would reinforce the traditional user pay, user benefit way of financing.
I'll ask you more.
Transportation.
I'll ask you more about the pay-fors in a moment, but why is this better, in your opinion, than the House version? The transportation chair in the House, Peter DeFazio, would obviously take issue with that. He wants part of his bill to be reconciled with this one.
Yes, but his goes way overboard on transit and passenger rail, which are, I think, there's a belief that these are the environmental friendly approaches, and that we need to have a whole lot more federal and other investment in them. But in fact, they're a drop in the bucket of passenger transportation. The average amount of personal trips taken by people on transit is 3% of personal trips, 5% of commuting trips prior to the pandemic. Nobody at this point in time has any idea how many people will come back who used to ride transit every day to commute to work. So this is a really foolish time to pour tens of billions of dollars of net new money into expanding transit, when, in fact, transit has a huge backlog of deferred maintenance, as does Amtrak. What they need first is the fix-it-first approach that the Biden administration supposedly believes in, rather than expanding things before we know if there's really going to be a demand for them.
In terms of the pay-fors here, Bob, one of the items that caught my eye, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is the idea that economic growth from this plan itself, growth caused by infrastructure, will help to pay for infrastructure. I assume that means higher tax revenues. Is that going to work?
It's very hard to tell. I mean, somebody is modeling on that, but I mean, a lot of this is based on historical things. We know when the interstate highway system was built, it produced large economic benefits in the first 20 years because it was such a huge improvement in both personal vehicle transportation and commercial truck. It basically built the trucking industry that we know today. But in recent decades, there's nowhere near that kind of productivity gains. Now, there are important reasons anyway to expand when you have chronic congestion in certain places because the system is not as big as the demand that's now on it. Yes, it makes sense in many cases to do that. It also helps to do pricing, which is completely absent in both the House bill and this bill. So there are tools that are useful, but I don't take seriously that estimate of increased federal tax revenues from growth due to especially things like investing in high-speed rail and Amtrak and a much bigger program of mass transit that we don't know anybody's going to really use.
As we spend time with Robert Poole of the Reason Foundation, transportation expert. One of the issues that you mentioned briefly earlier, I'd love to hear you kind of talk about here, backing off, is this sort of trend that, well, users are not paying for transportation funding. People who actually get in their cars are not paying for the roads they're driving on. This is a whole different funding mechanism we're apparently getting used to.
Yeah, this disturbs me very much. And for the president to say that he would not allow any increase in the federal gas tax, which hasn't been raised since 1993, because it would be regressive and would hurt people. I mean, that is so. I mean, the price of gas alone fluctuates by more than any likely increase in the gas tax that would actually be a meaningful increase in user revenues. And the same goes for the hostility on the part of Congressman DeFazio and the House leadership to tolls. Tolls, particularly variable tolls on express lanes, have been a huge congestion reliever in large urban areas, Dallas, Houston, Washington, D.C. metro area, Miami. And that is completely lost sight of in all of these bills.
We only have a minute left here, Bob, but if all of that stuff was in there, if we hiked the gas tax, if we added tolls, there'd be no chance for this plan to pass, right?
I think that's correct in the current situation. But there is a way. There's a few provisions in the bill that increase the federal provisions for allowing private capital investment, which is what has built those express toll lanes in Dallas and Fort Worth and Washington, D.C., Virginia, and so forth. And that is increasing the private activity bonds that can be allowed, that allow the private sector to invest on a level playing field with tax-exempt municipal bonds. Strengthening programs like called TIFIA and RRIF that provide federal loans for both the highway and rail projects, making those more viable and requiring stronger demonstrations of value for money in these kinds of projects. The benefits are greater than the cost. Those are almost little-noticed provisions in this, which were not in the House bill at all, not in the president's original plan, but they are in the bipartisan plan. Those have been recommended by the Bipartisan Policy Center, by the U.S. Chamber, I think by the Business Roundtable as well.
Okay.
So there's at least an opening for more private capital investment, which would be on a user-pays basis.
Glad you pointed that out. Robert Poole at the Reason Foundation, we thank you. And coming up, Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar, Tim Stenovic right here, and join me at 5. We'll be back for more on Sound On. I'm Joe Matthew. This is Bloomberg.
There are reported.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the Terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
who live for a great business story.
What actually worries you, though?
It is another fascinating piece of reporting.
They work here.
It is a fantastic story.
Bloomberg Business Week, weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Green Business Report. Scientists who have studied climate change say world leaders can either find a way to curb greenhouse gas emissions or get used to deadly heat waves. Researchers at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology found that the likelihood of record-shattering heat waves increases with the rate at which the climate heats up. The Daily Mail reports the team determined that through 2050, week-long heat waves will be up to 7 times more likely than they are now if the planet continues to warm at the current rate. The probability of killer heat will increase even more after 2050. The researchers ran climate simulations to study the likelihood of week-long record-shattering heat waves under various future emission scenarios, and there is some hope for the future. The scientists say that if human-induced warming is successfully stabilized by aggressive mitigation, there would still be more frequent and intensive heat waves than in the past, but record-breaking extremes would be less likely. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
Burden LLP Accountants and Advisors presents Tax Chat with Lisa Goldman, partner and leader of Burden's International Tax and Advisory Practice.
It's a smart business practice to diversify your investment portfolio, and many investors look for opportunities in different countries to achieve this objective. However, investing overseas can be complicated and often requires working with a specialist who has a firm grasp of both domestic and international tax law. At Burden Accountants and Advisors, our experienced team works with clients to help them develop cross-border tax plans that minimize their tax liabilities, ensure compliance, and save them money.
If you're a high net worth individual or a business owner, let Burden help protect you, your family, and your business. For more tax chat from Burden Accountants and Advisors, visit burdenllp.com. That's BERDONLLP.com. Burden Accountants and Advisors. We listen, we solve, we do.
With 3 bright minds thinking of questions.
How far apart are the two Americas right now?
Someone's bound to ask the one you most want answered.
What defines that as the year goes on?
Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz.
How do you explain the fact that you have not seen a cheer from equity traders?
Bloomberg Surveillance.
Will that occur within market stability?
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Broadcasting 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
Check your calendars, everyone. It's Friday's Eve.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to say that, because as I was coming down here, our executive producer, Quick Take, David Myers, said, Happy Friday's Eve.
Aw, see, we're making it a thing.
Yeah, we are. Big smile.
It is Friday's Eve. It's Thursday, July 29th, 2021. Carol Masser, Tim Stenovic in our Interactive Broker studio, also streaming on YouTube. We've got stocks up toward all-time highs. I think they've hit it on an intraday basis already, thanks to, go figure, weaker than forecast GDP data.
Yeah, that eases investor worries about inflation. Also eases investor concerns about the Fed pulling back on that easy monetary policy. We're going to talk about all that and more in just a few
She's
minutes.
kind of looking kind of smart right now.
Yeah, it's like we can see the future, right?
We're going to talk about that. Speaking of the future, the Robinhood IPO, that is perhaps the future of trading and how we look at fintech, but the IPO struggling a little bit, and then we've got Amazon earnings after the close. Speaking of Amazon, the other Amazon, we're going to freak you out with the story in the magazine. Sorry, everybody.
That's not a great one. In the meantime, let's get a check out the latest with the trading day with Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much. Let's begin with Amazon. As you mentioned, it does report after the closing bell. Shares now lower by 0.8%. Also after the bell, by the way, T-Mobile US, T-Mobile down 0.7%. Robinhood, let's begin there. Shares slumping now by 4.6%. Robinhood is the online trading platform focused on making investors out of millennials. It is slipping below its trading debut before climbing back closer to its price in its initial public offering. But right now, Robinhood shares lower by just about 4.8%. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ NASDAQ all pushing higher. In fact, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is now at a record of 215 points, intraday high, up by about 0.6%. S&P is at a record of 26, higher by 0.6%. NASDAQ up 49, a gain there of 0.3%. The NASDAQ 100 index up 0.4. Russell 2000 up 1.2%. Dow Transport's up by 1.1%. And the SOX, the Philadelphia Stock Exchange's Semiconductor Stock Index, up now by 2%. 10-year's down 9.30. 10-year yield 1.26%. Gold up 1.3%, 18.31 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.3%, 73.32 a barrel. Again, recapping, stocks higher, S&P up 0.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, you are set up on this Friday's Eve. All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Let's get to the Market Drivers Report. And let's set that Business Week agenda on this Thursday. Dave Wilson, stocks editor at Bloomberg News. He's in our Interactive Broker studio. He's dressed up. He's got a suit on. You think he's going for an interview or something? I don't know.
He's gone tomorrow.
What did he hit? Like 30 million years here at Bloomberg? And maybe he's like...
a jacket on, not a suit. I don't get fitted for that until next week.
All right, good to know. Mark your calendars, everyone, on that. Reed Pickard follows the economic calendar for us here at Bloomberg. She's U.S. economy reporter at Bloomberg News in our 99.1 studio in the nation's capital. Dave, let's kick it off with you. Feels like, for the most part, all in today on the equity trade.
Yeah, it sure looks that way. I mean, what's notable is what's going on with the chip makers. You had results out of Qualcomm late yesterday. That went over pretty well. I mean, it's the whole shift to 5G networks, consumer demand for new phones. And since Qualcomm is the biggest maker of smartphone chips, they're clearly benefiting. That showed up in the latest quarterly results. You got Qualcomm up 5.7%, but heck, you've got a couple of other chip makers that are doing even better. Advanced Micro Devices up 7.7%. Yeah. Xilinx up 6.7%. So there's plenty of that to go around. Now, of course, the other side of the coin, well, we can talk about a bunch of stocks like Facebook, or we can just focus on Robinhood.
Yeah. Well,
take your pick.
Go there. We have to go there. Robinhood, it's going to be something we're going to talk about a little bit later on. It's IPO. They did it differently. They did it their own version. They are definitely disrupting things. And it was kind of a wah-wah.
So far, absolutely. As we speak, you've got the trading app down 4.5% from its price, $38 a share, where it was sold. Low end of the proposed range. I mean, so they raised $2.1 billion. Well, $2 billion for the company, $100 million for the co-founders and the chief financial officer. But in any case, we've seen the stock pretty much lower since trading began about halfway through the session. And so there's already, here's a number for you.
What?
55 million shares were sold. Volume, as we speak, is above 79 million. So there's a lot of flipping.
There is a lot of movement going on.
Wow, and those early IPO investors are not even the ones who Robinhood sold to, are not even supposed to trade because they can get banned from participating in early IPOs. All of this is happening against the backdrop of some economic data that we got this morning. Reed Pickard, come on in here and just give us an overview of what happened with GDP data showing that consumer spending was strong in the second quarter, though it overall growth trailed expectations. It was a miss.
Absolutely. So today's GDP report really highlighted this kind of clashing of trends that's happening in the economy right now. So on one side, we have this pent-up demand that economists have been talking about for months finally showing up in the data. So as you mentioned, you saw consumer spending really jump more than expected and actually increased at one of the fastest paces in decades. So, the American consumer is intact and strong. But as this consumer demand has ramped up and ramped up so fast, it's been really hard for businesses to try to keep up with that demand. So firms have been struggling to fill open positions, and supply chain bottlenecks have weighed on production. So all of this has capped how fast the U.S. economy can actually grow. So while the overall GDP growth missed expectations, you really saw this strong consumer, and instead what was really weighing on growth was, things like inventories, and that was really what you were seeing this drag from.
Inventories not building up like we have seen in the past?
Right. So instead, because manufacturers have struggled to get the people and materials they need, they've been depleting these inventories. So, a key area we've seen this, for instance, is the auto sector, which in the report showed that output had plummeted. And we know that's in large part because of this ongoing semiconductor shortage.
Right. You didn't even have to look at the economic report to see it. You could just look at Ford Motors' earnings.
Right.
Because they were a beneficiary of rising prices because inventories have been going down.
Exactly. The supply demand in their favor. We certainly saw that. Hey, Reed, though, the other part of the economic equation today was also weekly jobless, which came in higher than forecast. How do we read that? I guess the assumption is economy is reopening, even though we're seeing some hot spots in the nation, and that you would assume more people going back to work rather than filing for jobless claims. How does that factor in?
Right. So jobless applications fell. They just fell less than expected.
Okay.
But
from the week before. Okay.
Yes, from the week before. But one thing to keep in mind with these numbers, particularly right now, is because of the volatility in the usual auto retooling schedule, you're seeing these week-to-week adjustments are really challenging for the BLS. So big picture, jobless claims are kind of moving sideways. But next week we'll get the July jobs report, which will give us some insight into the pace of hiring and really what the jobs market looks like right now.
Just have to wait a little over a week for that one. Hey, Dave, before you go, just very briefly, Amazon, T-Mobile, Skyworks, among others, Twilio, after the bell today. What are you looking for?
Well, I mean, Amazon, sort of ending the week of big tech earnings. So the question is, how does it stack up against its peers? And I mentioned Facebook earlier. Those shares down more than 4% in response to their results. So that's kind of a low bar, you could argue, for Amazon to surpass. And beyond that, it's just a matter of, how does the business look as we see people kind of going out more, going to stores. How does that influence the whole online shopping proposition, which is at the heart of their business after all?
I've done more shopping. Have you done more shopping?
Of course.
Yeah, just out and about, kind of reopening. Have you done more shopping?
I can't say I've done much, actually.
Next week is when
I've been working more lately.
Dave has a shopper here at Bloomberg for him. Hence the suits that are being fitted next week.
There is that.
Yeah. All right, Dave Wilson, I know you're going to have a long weekend, and I'm going to be off for a week, so I'll see you in about a week, but you'll be back, of course, on Monday.
Yeah.
What?
Chart of the day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's
Let's
right.
not forget that.
Carol, what's going on?
Trying to rush me out the door or something?
I was ready to be done. Our thanks to Dave and to Reed Pickert.
Let's do the Bloomberg Business Week Bite of the Day. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number, $28 billion.
I've done that. I've tried to finish the show early. The Senate infrastructure deal envisions stricter rules on crypto investors to collect more taxes to fund part of the plan. The provisions would raise an extra $28 billion from crypto transactions. The proposal would impose more rules on crypto brokers to report transactions of digital assets, including virtual currencies, to the IRS. It would also require businesses to report crypto transactions of more than $10,000. That's a key number.
Regulators are paying attention.
Yes.
In the meantime, let's get a check of world and national news with Nancy Lyons in the nation's capital. Hey there, Nance.
Hey, Tim. Relief will soon be ending for those who've been unable to pay their mortgages. The Biden administration says it will allow a nationwide ban on evictions to expire this Saturday. Officials say their hands are virtually tied due to a recent Supreme Court ruling that prevented it from being extended. By the end of March, the government reported 6.4 million American households were behind on their rent. And earlier this month, the Pulse survey by the census found roughly 3.6 million people in the U.S. said they faced eviction in the next 2 months. Those leading the panel investigating the riot on the Capitol remain hopeful they'll be able to secure testimony from former Trump administration officials. Bloomberg's Ann Cates reports.
Mississippi Congressman Benny Thompson, who is chairing the committee investigating the attack, tells Politico that a recent Justice Department ruling will allow them to freely seek witness statements and lessen the possibility of resistance from current or former Trump employees. The panel only recently hired its senior staff and launched its website and has more work to do before it can seek out potential testimony from Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy or Joint Chiefs of Staff Leader General Mark Milley. In Washington, Ann Cates, Bloomberg Radio.
Eating fruits and vegetables high in flavonoids can help to prevent cognitive decline. In a study published in the American Academy of Neurology journal, scientists say those who ate 600 milligrams of flavonoids a day had a 20% lower risk of cognitive decline. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
When was the last time?
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to the real-time financial news, data, and analytics that can take your workflow to the next level. Power up at Bloomberg.com/professional.
And you felt fully informed on world and economic affairs.
Is GDP catching up with the zeitgeist, or are we going to have to catch up with a boom economy?
That might have been it.
Is that a move that's accompanied by better bank stock performance?
Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz.
It strikes me the degree of policy uncertainty for economists to factor in.
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
Remember the last time your family visited the forest? It's a place of wonder and imagination for the whole family, where stories come to life, and it's closer than you think. Ready to plan your next visit? Make the forest part of your story today at a local park near you, or find one at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg Terminal. The buy side and the sell side together, collaborating across markets and countries in real time, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network of over 325,000 financial professionals that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Request a demo at Bloomberg.com/professional.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially for approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SavedByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SavedByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SavedByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Foods Initiative and the Ad Council.
When was the moment you discovered that you were meant for the business world?
Have you been getting a lot of inquiries from employers?
And then you started looking for the best sources of information.
Technology is challenging the regulators.
Doctors use kind of a virtual reality look.
I feel like the world is courting Elon Musk.
Which is how you got here.
How are other bankers restricted now?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. You know the expression, hit the ground running. We think it's a better idea to hit the ground listening. Karen Moscow.
The pandemic is having a major impact on the labor market.
Nathan Hager.
President Biden is setting a new goal.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
A landmark trial kicked off this week.
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
You really haven't seen that kind of move happen.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Right now, our country feels divided, but there's a place where people are coming together.
I was nervous to talk to someone so different than me.
Me too.
Love Has No Labels and One Small Step are helping people with different political views, beliefs, and experiences connect through conversation, and it feels good.
This conversation gives me hope.
It gives me a lot of hope too.
Take a step toward bringing our country and your community together. Start a conversation at lovehasnolabels.com/onesmallstep. A message from StoryCorps, Love Has No Labels, and the Ad Council.
This is Daniel Blazer. I'm a trustee of the Jewish Communal Fund and chair of the Special Gifts Committee. Back in March, when the world came to a grinding halt with the coronavirus crisis, I turned to the Jewish Communal Fund to make grants to charities that were important to me. Our community of fund holders responded generously, and so did JCF. Through our Special Gifts Fund, which functions like an endowment, JCF made a grant of $1 million to UJA Federation of New York and Metropolitan Council on Jewish Poverty to fight food insecurity and provide much-needed assistance to Holocaust survivors and single parents who have been impacted by the crisis. If you are not using a donor-advised fund for your giving, now is the time. Working with the Jewish Communal Fund is easy. It's convenient, it's efficient, and it enables you to focus on your charitable giving, especially in difficult moments like these. To find out how JCF can maximize your charitable impact and reduce your tax burden, visit jcfny.org.
Introducing Bloomberg Quick Take. Our global stories take on tomorrow today. Watch live news on the events changing your business and your world. And go deeper with original shows on business, technology, politics, and culture. Don't settle for a news network built for yesterday. For a global view and an informed take, Bloomberg Quick Take. Now streaming free on Bloomberg.com/QuickTake. Brought to you by Accenture, American Express, and AT&T Business.
I spend a lot of time in the garage, but even more time in the rain, sleet, and mud. In 95, I helped tow your moving trailer. In 05, I helped you get out of a ditch. Yeah, I know I'm a bit rusty, and sadly in 09, it was sparks from me. Your handy chains, dragging behind your truck that accidentally started a wildfire.
Sparks from dragging chains can start a wildfire. Spark a change, not a wildfire. Visit SmokeyBear.com. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. We begin with Robinhood. First day of trading there. Robinhood shares are lower after the IPO, down by 5.3%. Went out at 38 right now, $35.99 on Robinhood. Ticker on that, by the way, HOOD. Down the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing. Records right now for the S&P and the Dow Jones Industrial Average. NASDAQ pushing higher. Got to stay with Bloomberg Business Week to find out how things shake out at that closing bell. And of course, how Asian markets react tonight. S&P up 25, higher by about 0.6%. NASDAQ up now by 37, a gain of 0.3. Dow Industrials up 213, higher by 0.6%. After the closing bell today, we will be hearing from Amazon.com ahead of its report. Shares lower by 0.9%. Also reporting after the bell today, T-Mobile, its shares down also by 0.9%. Lots of earnings last night, among them Facebook. Facebook shares tumbling 4.4%. Also reporting last night, Qualcomm. Qualcomm shares up now by 5.7%. 10-year yield 1.26%. Gold, spot gold up 1.3%, 18.30 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.3%, 73.36 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So Tim and I have gone through some of the headlines, but we just want to remind you, Citigroup going back to requiring employees, regardless of their vaccination status, to wear masks when they are in the office. That's according to a person in the know. CDC, we heard from them, Tim, advising fully vaccinated individuals to once again starting wearing masks in public indoor settings in places where the virus is spreading rapidly. And we've had a ton of companies, particularly in big tech space, Twitter, Google, Lyft, rolling back, bringing workers back to the office.
The big question I think that many people are grappling with is, how do they make sense of it? They were vaccinated in January, February. Many people were vaccinated in April. Are they going to need a booster? Exactly. Information about that too. Fortunately, Dr. Hamish Adalja, senior scholar and infectious disease physician at the Center for Health Security at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, he joins us now on the phone from Pittsburgh. The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LLP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Dr. Adalja, I want to start with the news that we got from the CDC earlier this week that I think was confusing to a lot of people. Do you think that people who live in what the CDC defines as areas of concern, including New York City, including Arkansas, if they have been vaccinated, should they wear a mask indoors?
It's something that I think should be more left to individual discretion for fully vaccinated individuals, because there may be a risk that people who are fully vaccinated and get a breakthrough infection may develop enough viral load that they could potentially be contagious. But it's not what's driving the pandemic. It's not what's driving transmission in these hotspots. So to make a policy, in my mind, based on something that's, by their own admission, a very rare occurrence, doesn't necessarily make sense to me. I think if you're an immunosuppressed person and you've been fully vaccinated and you're in a high-risk setting, it may make sense to wear a mask so that you don't get a breakthrough infection. But what we're talking about with breakthrough infections are largely clinically insignificant, meaning no symptoms, mild symptoms. It's when you walk through a hospital, it's not breakthrough infections that you're seeing in the hospital. It's almost exclusively people who are not vaccinated. So to me, that doesn't really seem congruent, and I think it is confusing, and I think it's going to be something that has basically only a marginal benefit, if any, when implemented.
What's happening in my universe right now is all my friends have kids who are under the age of 12. That's where I am in life, and what they're wondering is, okay, well, my kid can't be vaccinated. Can I actually pass a breakthrough infection to my kid? Like, do I need to start wearing a mask at work because that's a risk?
I would not. I think that this is a very, very low risk. Obviously, if you have a child that has severe asthma or has had a heart transplant, for example, you may want to take extra precautions. But in general, this is a very rare occurrence and not something that I think really makes a major impact on how this pandemic is going to unfold. That being said, it's also true that just because children are not vaccinated doesn't mean that they're at very heightened risk for severe disease of COVID-19, especially as you get to those younger age groups where COVID-19 is more like other respiratory viruses that they may face. So I think that this comes up to kind of parental risk tolerance. And with unvaccinated children that are healthy, I think the risk that they get it from a vaccinated person and have a severe outcome is very, very, not completely near zero.
Dr. Dalja, then, do you think the CDC made a mistake in coming out with that mask guidance?
I do think they made a mistake. I think to make a policy based on a very rare event occurring and at the same time undermine the vaccines in the mind of the vaccine hesitant, because now they see nothing changes for them if they get vaccinated, really, I think it sets this whole thing back. Because the goal of the vaccines was never to block every breakthrough infection. The goal of the vaccines was to stop serious disease, hospitalization, death. And as we all know, the vaccines are working tremendously when you use that to measure their success. Because who's in the hospital? Unvaccinated people. Who are dying? Unvaccinated people. The vaccines are working extremely well. They are the solution. Going back to kind of primitive masking approach when we have a 21st century solution, the vaccine really makes no sense to me. And by their own admission, the CDC says this is probably accounting for a very, very small portion of the transmission going on. So what impact do you think that will have if it's only a very small transmission? And especially in those places that are hotspots, those people are not going to wear masks, they're not going to get vaccinated, and I think this is just going to further entrench their vaccine hesitancy and confuse everybody else in the rest of the country trying to understand if it applies to them or not.
Although we've done some analysis here at Bloomberg, and our Drew Armstrong has done some reporting that in those hotspots where people have been slow to get the vaccine, that those numbers are going up, maybe as a result of this heightened awareness. Is there something to be said by saying, okay, we're going back to masks, things are getting a little bit tricky again, that might get more people who were hesitant to get the vaccine to get it now?
There has been some uptick in vaccination rates in some of those hotspot areas, but that occurred before this CDC guidance. And remember, we've never said that unvaccinated people should be going around infecting people without masks. What particularly is, I have a problem with the CDC guidance is the guidance for vaccinated people, whether that's the right message to be sending and whether the data actually justifies this type of a reaction based on the fact that it's not likely. It is clearly not what's driving the pandemic. We are in a pandemic, as the CDC director said, of the unvaccinated. That's where our focus really should be, trying to get vaccine uptake up. But I think now, if you tell somebody that lives in Missouri, you get fully vaccinated, you still have to wear a mask. They may not get vaccinated. Remember that we saw a big uptick when the CDC changed their guidance. So if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. So I think this is a lot more problematic.
Dr. Amish Adalja, he's going to come back from Johns Hopkins. He'll return to Tim and me in just a moment. You're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
Money Minute. As COVID-19 infections soar again, many bosses who've been pushing to get employees back in the office are having to back off. Lyft has delayed its back-to-the-office date until February. Apple and Google say they won't bring staff back until at least October. Wall Street is back on track after a couple of lackluster days. The Dow Industrials are up 216, the S&P is up 26, and the Nasdaq up 45. Americans are eating lots of chicken. Sales are booming, even topping pre-pandemic levels. Chicken producers can't keep up. That means tighter supplies and higher prices. Wingstop says it can't get enough wings. It's switching to thighs. Black Widow star Scarlett Johansson is suing Disney over the film's simultaneous release in theaters and on Disney+. She says her contract guaranteed an exclusive theatrical release. Her salary was based in large part on the film's box office performance. Kowski, Bloomberg Radio.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit AZ.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Where are today's real testing grounds for the latest innovation? Places where advancements in health, transportation, and business happen every day. Cities. Today, cities lead the way, taking local solves and turning them into global solutions. Now, introducing Bloomberg City Lab, a new platform covering the present and future of global cities. Learn more at bloomberg.com/citylab. Brought to you in partnership with Hyundai.
We used to take our freedom of movement for granted. Not anymore.
It's not just the people who work for the airlines.
And it's natural to feel grateful for the things that kept you going.
Does America have a chance to lose our advantage?
Can we get to herd immunity fast enough so that we'll be in good shape?
But really, we were just doing our jobs.
Oxford University is starting a study on patients who've recovered from COVID.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
What is dedication?
My daughter is biological and my son is adopted. I love them both so much. From the morning when you wake up to putting them to bed at night and every moment in between. I think the parent's job is to protect our children but also prepare them for the world so they become good, kind human beings.
That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
How are financial services firms managing in this new reality? Claire Santaniello, Managing Director at BNY Mellon's Pershing, explains.
If the current times have taught us anything, it's the critical role that technology plays in client relationships. Global conditions have created a business imperative for firms to digitally transform the way they meet client needs and the way they work. Pershing's industry-leading technology enables you to adapt to the evolving ways your clients want to do business, now and in the future, and can help you build an even stronger digital client experience in a simpler, smarter, and safer environment. We have worked with clients of every size to transform their business. Pershing gives you the foundation to stand on, plus our unique perspective, to help you run your business even during the most uncertain of times. We help you consider everything.
To learn more about how Pershing can help you transform your business, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Hey everybody, it's time for today's STEM tip. Want to know how to make your selfies even better? Okay, let's use science. The best time for photos is golden right before the sun sets, when the atmosphere scatters blue and violet wavelengths, making perfect, soft, and golden selfie light to show off that beautiful face of yours. Click. Check out Chic and STEM for more inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
When we say Bloomberg brings you the latest financial and business news anywhere, we've actually given the matter quite a bit of thought.
Let's get now to our guest joining us from Bangkok. She joins us on the phone from the Hudson Valley.
Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg. The world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, so I have many more questions.
I do too.
Dr. Amish Adalja, Johns Hopkins.
And hopefully he has a million more answers.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. We're going to get back to him, continue our conversation on the latest headlines when it comes to COVID and the vaccine. In the meanwhile,
I was thinking about maybe the market's getting ready. They're not.
They're not worried.
They're not. Market's not worried.
Kind of. Striking it off sign. We're going to get back to him. First of all, let's get back to Charlie Pellet. Check on that trading day and top business stories. Lots going on, Charlie.
Indeed, and the big question, will we see another record for the S&P 500 index today? So far this year, the S&P up 17.8%. Today, up another 24, up another 0.6%. 44.25 right now on the S&P. The Dow also at a record, up 203, higher by 0.6%. NASDAQ up 39 right now, up by 0.3%. Broad-based rally. NASDAQ 100 index up 0.4%. Russell 2000 up by 1%. Dow Transports up 1.1%. The SOX, the Philadelphia Stock Exchange's semiconductor stock index, up now by 2%. First day out for Robinhood. It is losing ground in its trading debut after a muted IPO. Robinhood shares ticker HOOD down by 5%. Apple will sell $6.5 billion of bonds in a four-part deal. S&P 500 index higher, as we mentioned, up 0.6%. 10-year down 11/32 the yield there, 1.26%. And we've got equities rising toward records as the latest read on the economy eases concerns about inflation and the Fed scaling back its ultra-accommodative policies. Gold, spot gold up 1.3%, $18.30 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.7%, $73.62 a barrel. Citigroup has gone back to requiring employees to wear masks when they are in the office, regardless of their vaccination status. Most Apple stores are restoring a mask requirement. Also, it comes as the CDC returns to a recommendation for fully vaccinated people to wear masks indoors where infections are soaring. Dr. Jennifer Nuzzo is a senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and she spoke with us this morning on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
If you live in an area where there is a whole lot of disease and most of the people around you are not vaccinated, which those two things are probably linked, if you live in that area, you may want to wear a mask if you are the kind of person who never wants to get a cold. You may also want to wear a mask if you're someone who lives with someone who's really vulnerable, who, despite maybe also being vaccinated, is the kind of person who you really worry about. People who are elderly or have underlying health conditions that may not give them the same level of protection from the vaccine that the rest of us have.
Dr. Nuzzo of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, which is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Checking some of the vaccine stocks that we follow on a regular basis. Pfizer down 0.7%. Its German partner BioNTech, the ADR, is down 1.6%. AstraZeneca up 1.4%. Moderna lower now by 2.1%. They're based in Cambridge. J&J, Johnson & Johnson unchanged on the day. Recapping, Robinhood down 4.6%. S&P up 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
Back to Charlie. Thank you so much. I want to get right back to Dr. Amish Adalja, infectious disease physician and senior scholar at Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. Charlie, of course, mentioning and playing a little bit of a sound from another interview from one of his colleagues. Dr. Adalja, what I want to ask you is if we didn't have the CDC come out and say you've got to start wearing masks, and we just kind of kept reopening the economy, those of us who got vaccines going about our business, could we do that? And what would be the trajectory of maybe what the world might look like, especially since we are seeing rising cases and rising hospitalizations in some U.S. hotspots. How would it play out? I guess I'm trying to understand it.
Exactly the same, because it's not vaccinated people that are driving hospitalizations. It's not vaccinated people that are driving cases. It's the unvaccinated. So the CDC guidance was for vaccinated people to wear masks in high-risk situations. But they're not the ones driving it. So no, I don't think that the CDC guidance is going to change the trajectory one way or the other, because it's not vaccinated people that are causing hospitalizations. As we've said multiple times, almost universally, it's the unvaccinated that are in hospital. So no, I don't think it's going to make a major dent in what's going on here. What will make a dent is the unvaccinated changing their behavior by either starting to wear masks or getting themselves vaccinated, which is the ultimate solution.
But if we just kept going, we can manage servicing those that are unvaccinated who come down with COVID. I think the fear is, you know what I'm asking, the fear is we go back to where we were a year ago. And it sounds like we wouldn't do that, or maybe in certain spots of the country.
I don't think COVID-19 is a systemic risk to the United States anymore, because enough high-risk people have been vaccinated in many parts of the country, in most parts of the country. So you'll see cases decoupled from hospitalization. There are some places like Springfield, Missouri, like Arkansas, like Louisiana, where that's not the case. So that becomes a regional issue. But again, it's not the vaccinated people that are causing that problem. It's the unvaccinated people that are spreading it amongst themselves. And whatever contribution, if there is one, of vaccinated people, it is a minuscule proportion of what's going on here. So restricting what vaccinated people can do on behalf of the unvaccinated isn't fair. I don't think it's scientific, because if you're fully vaccinated, COVID-19 is no longer a threat to you. You will not get serious disease, hospitalization, or death. And period end. The vaccines are doing their job. It's the fact that not enough people have taken the vaccine that's causing the problem. And these breakthrough infections, which were expected, are mostly clinically insignificant, have very, very mild symptoms, and are not even a problem for the people who get those breakthrough infections. And the issue has to be focusing on the unvaccinated people in those hotspots that don't want to be vaccinated, they don't want to wear masks, and that's where our problem is. And I think that's how we're going to progress for some time in this two-track pandemic, where the Northeast, for example, has COVID managed more like a normal respiratory infection, and other parts of the country where it's still a disruptive effect until more people get vaccinated, or the Delta variant burns itself out by infecting enough of the population. So it's not a good situation.
Yeah, we only have a minute left, and I know that a lot of people listening right now are thinking about kids, because the people under 12 in this country are the ones who are not vaccinated yet. What one listener writing in now asking about the real risk of mortality and morbidity within kids. What do we know about the latest data? What do we know about the numbers?
Well, children represent a very, very small proportion of the morbidity and mortality in terms of hospitalizations and deaths. Yes, there have been kids hospitalized and kids have died, but it's at a percentage basis, it's very, very small. And when you get to that younger age group, especially less than 12, it's comparable, if not less, than what we see with influenza, what we see with RSV. So I think that's something that's important to know, is that for younger children that are healthy, that don't have asthma, don't have heart disease, or heart transplants, or whatever it might be, this is on par with other respiratory viruses that we deal with year in and year out. So that gives you some cushion there. It's very different in younger children versus older people. That's where we've seen the morbidity and mortality. Children tend to be spared from the severe effect.
Thank you so much. Always appreciate it.
School gets back in session.
Exactly. Dr. Amish Adalja, infectious disease physician and senior scholar at Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security at the Bloomberg School of Public Health, of course, supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Phone.
Let's go check the latest world and national news with Nancy Lyons in D.C. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Tim. President Biden is expected to lay out plans for a COVID vaccination requirement for federal workers. That's expected later this afternoon. The directive may require federal employees and government contractors to prove they've been fully vaccinated or agree to regular COVID testing. This is in response to growing concerns about the rapid spread of the Delta variant. House Democrats are pushing back at new mask guidance from the Speaker of the House. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman has more on that.
Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said there's no scientific reason for vaccinated Americans to wear a mask when their chance of going to the hospital with COVID-19 is minimal.
There's a greater chance you got hit by lightning. For some reason, Pelosi thinks the storm is coming. That the Speaker only concerned about her own wealth, her own direction, and her own control. If you question and point the science out,
control has abandoned science to become a political arm of the administration. In Washington, Catherine Bloomberg Radio.
An emergency spending bill has made it through the Senate with unanimous support. The $2.1 billion bill includes money to bolster security at the Capitol and repay outstanding debts from the January 6th insurrection. The House has already approved a similar bill. Excitement in Oakdale, Minnesota today. The hometown of Olympic gymnast Sumi Lee. Lee today earned the gold medal in the women's all-around competition, the 5th American woman in a row to take the title. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
As a research
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to the real-time financial news, data, and analytics that can take your workflow to the next level. Power up at Bloomberg.com/professional.
University, NJIT makes smart technologies even smarter. That's why NJIT graduate and civil engineer Anya O'Dwyer says the university is so important for her industry.
Construction and civil engineering is always going to have cranes and, people and movement, but how we're designing and implementing things, that's what's changing. We have millions of data points now that we never had before, and that's allowed us to think about planning and design in a way that we haven't done so before. NJIT is very much at the forefront of that. Collecting data, understanding data, manipulating data, having access to a facility like NJIT, which is constantly focused on research and innovation, is so important for the industry and what it means to be designing for smarter systems.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Economics.
All this doom and gloom is out there.
Finance.
Do you see this as a technical correction?
Investment.
What are you looking at to give you some sort of compass through this period?
The Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast.
Lots and lots of talk about what the Fed should and shouldn't do.
Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, Lisa Abramowitz, and the names that shape the world's markets.
We speak with Professor Schiller of Yale University.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Listen today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Burden LLP Accountants and Advisors presents Tax Chat with Richard Goldstein, Senior Principal and Co-Leader of Burden State and Local Tax Practice.
COVID-19 pandemic state and local government restrictions have caused many people to shelter in place outside their primary state of residence. The new normal of remote working has proliferated potentially costly state and local tax residency issues. For example, if you live in Manhattan but have been residing and working in Connecticut because of the pandemic, you may be a resident of one or both states and potentially taxed twice on the same income. At Burden, we help clients develop a plan to address double residency concerns and non-resident income allocation to minimize their overall tax liability. If you're a high net worth individual or a business owner, let Burden help protect you, your family, and your business.
For more Tax Chat from Burden Accountants and Advisors, visit BurdenLLP.com. That's BERDONLLP.com. Burden Accountants and Advisors. We listen, we solve, we do.
I think it's just vapor.
Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
There's really not even that much nicotine in them, right?
One vape pod has as much nicotine as one pack of cigarettes.
My kid
knows it's dangerous. 5.4 million American kids vape, and most think it's harmless. Get your head out of the cloud. Talk to your kid about vaping. Visit talkaboutvaping.org. That's talkaboutvaping.org. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and the Ad Council.
Accounting professional Liam Cohen, CPA, a trustee of the Jewish Communal Fund, and Sephardic Beaker Holem, talks about why he uses JCF's donor-advised fund and recommends JCF to his clients.
JCF is an organization that I've worked with for many years, both personally and in my accounting practice. The ease of giving and managing my donations through their website is very effective. Using it for tax planning and managing all of my charitable giving through one place. JCF's endowment helps support Jewish organizations throughout the tri-state area, and that's very important to me and my clients.
JCF's donor-advised fund is the smarter way to give back. Let Jewish Communal Fund maximize your clients' charitable deductions and streamline their charitable giving. Since JCF handles all the administration, get started now at jcfny.org or call 212-752-8277. We have a gift for giving.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, shares how we help you consider everything.
In today's ever-evolving environment, the team at Pershing's Prime Services wants to know, what are you focused on now? Are you confident in the stability of your counterparty? Do you feel they can help you grow your business? When it comes to fundraising, do you have access to the mindset of the advisor or have what you need to navigate the ODD process? Exceptional service for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your demands, so you can focus on growing your business and producing results for your clients.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We're off session highs, but still can see a record out of the S&P 500 index, up 22 right now to 4422, up by 0.5%. Numbers first. We'll give you the why in a moment here with the Dow up 177, up 0.5. NASDAQ up 29, up by 0.2%. 10-year yield 1.26%. Equities pushing higher as the latest read on the economy eases concerns about inflation and the Fed scaling back its ultra-accommodative policies. Robinhood Markets, the online trading platform focused on making investors out of millennials, is pushing higher. Right now, little changed after its IPO this morning. HOOD on the ticker went out at 38 right now, 35.98. Shares are now trading lower by 5.3%. Amazon reports after the closing bell today. Amazon down by 1%. Last night we did hear from Facebook. Facebook down by 4.1%. We also heard from Qualcomm heading in the other direction, up now by 5.4%. Spot gold up 1.3%, 18.30 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.6%, 73.57 a barrel. Recapping S&P at a record up 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Okay, this may rightfully freak you out. It's about the last days of the rainforest. Yes, that rainforest, so crucial to the global environment, species, all of our living beings. It's a story in the magazine. It's about how the Brazilian Amazon is approaching the point of no return and the government there, Tim, fanning the flames.
Joel Weber is editor for Bloomberg Business Week. He's with us in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Jessica Bryce is senior editor for Latin America News at Bloomberg News, and she joins us on the phone from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Joel, we were talking about this during the break. I read the story this morning. It is something that actually put me in a pretty sour and foul mood because it is incredibly depressing. The Amazon rainforest, it's one of the globe's greatest natural resources. In the past 40 years, we've lost an area as big as California to deforestation.
Yeah, this is a gut-wrenching story, and I kind of can't think of something that has bigger global implications than losing the Amazon. And what Jessica's story shows is that it's really nuanced, and I think that is one thing. If you spend some time with the story, reading it or listening to it, if you prefer, you will come away with some of that nuance. And what she ends up doing is walking us through some of the characters that are on the ground there, and as she'll tell us, the story started as a data project and then became probably one of the most compelling stories I've ever published as the editor of Business Week. And the thing that I think it shows more than anything is that there is a official land grab policy that is happening in Brazil, and it's allowing the rainforest to basically get turned into grassland that can be where cattle can be raised, which is about the worst 180 that we can do for the planet, as you can imagine. So Jessica, walk us through where you started this project and what you learned along the way.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show. I started the project really looking at the data behind deforestation, trying to figure out, we've been struggling with this issue for decades now, and why is it still something that we're seeing? Why is it not something that the world is able to stop? Why is not the Brazil government not stopping it? So I started looking at the data of who's actually doing it, and it took me into directions that I had never really expected. I mean, it is such a nuanced story. It is such a complicated story. And what it comes down to is, the folks on the ground, for decades, they've been told that deforestation is a good thing, that they need to deforest the land. And in fact, in some cases, they were, handed plots, and if they didn't deforest the land, they risked losing those plots. And so that culture has really stuck in the Amazon and the folks there now, which a lot of them are incredibly poor. The government keeps that policy alive because it helps pump this land, this cleared land, into industrial farming operations that feed the world.
I mean, this is such a big part of it, right? Supporting the people who live in a country and area, right? And so there's, as you just explained, that on one hand, but at the same time, we're talking about the existence of the global population and protecting the rainforest. It's a policy that's not just from President Bolsonaro. It's been around for a while.
It has been around for a while. During the dictatorship, the government really prioritized giving it to big landowners, big industry, and then so you had this population of people who've been working the land for generations, and so when the democracy came about, the government decided to give them small plots of land. So that was in the Constitution. What we saw is that two governments prior to Bolsonaro, they moved the needle forward. They said, okay, so we'll amnesty more recent deforestation, we'll amnesty bigger deforestation. Now what the government wants to do is sort of take that to just a very scary next step and say, okay, we're going to start amnestying more recent deforestation as recently as 2012. Bolsonaro did want to amnesty as recently as 2018. But we're not even going to check it. We're going to do it all by satellite. And so it really opens the door to almost 16 million